Welcome to Mineral Talks Live, the monthly live mineral webinar that brings you in-depth and in-person interviews with mineral people from around the world. Mineral Talks Live is brought to you by a joint effort among the Mineralogical and Geological Museum at Harvard University, the SMMP, and Blue Cap Productions. Tune in on the first Wednesday of every month and stay connected to your mineral world. Now, broadcasting live from beautiful Honolulu, Hawaii, the land of aloha, ukuleles, and shakas, this is Mineral Talks Live. Hello there and Happy New Year. We hope all of you had a great New Year celebration and that you're looking forward to a spectacular 2023. In the Chinese horoscope, 2023 is the year of the rabbit, and that means it's a time of gentleness and serenity. I don't know about you, but I'm hoping for a whole lot of that in the coming year. Today is Wednesday, January 4th, and this is our first Mineral Talks Live show of 2023. For those of you joining us for the first time, Mineral Talks Live is the monthly mineral talk show where we sit down with people from all facets of the mineral world to learn more about what they do and who they are. Our guests include some of the best curatrix, curators, collectors, dealers, miners, researchers, artists, and media people in the mineral world. My name is Brian Swoboda from Blue Cap Productions, and together with my gentle and serene partners, Dr. Raquel Alonso Perez from the Mineralogical and Geological Museum at Harvard University, and Dr. Eloise Gaillou from the Society of Mineral Museum Professionals, also known as the SMMP, we'd like to welcome you to our show. If you want to see a complete list of all our past guests and links to those interviews, please visit the URL at the bottom of the screen, and don't forget to click the subscribe button. Otherwise, tune in on the first Wednesday of every month and stay up to date on what's going on in the mineral world. Now, one of the things that makes this program so unique is that this isn't just a conversation between me and our guests. All of you are part of the show when you participate through the chat or the Q&A features, both of which are located at the bottom of your Zoom window. The chat feature, that's now working, allows you to type messages to everyone watching the live show. If you have thoughts, comments, or questions about what we're discussing, this chat area is where you can post them and interact with each other while we're talking. Usually our guests and I aren't able to read those comments, but Raquel and Eloise, mainly Eloise today, will be very active in the chat area and may even interject a question or comment to us during the interview. Also, this is a fun place to say hi to everyone watching the live show, and you can share where you're tuning in from so that we can see what parts of the world we're reaching. As for any general questions you may have for our guests, those questions can be typed into the Q&A section, and we'll get to those questions at the end of the show. Finally, towards the end of the program, you'll see a window pop up on your screen. This is our Quick Fire 5 Questions segment to see how well you know our guests. So join us, play along, and let's see how many we can get right for our guests. And speaking of guests, today's guests really need no introductions. The Jones name is well known throughout the mineral world, and I've had the absolute honor of working with both of them for many, many years. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our honored guests, Bob and Evan Jones. Hey guys, how are you doing today?
It's fine. Good morning. Man, that was some introduction.
Bob, you've had a lot of experience being on camera. How did you like that intro? Did that come out pretty smoothly?
Yeah. Well, what am I supposed to say? That was terrible?
Oh, well, no, true. Now, Bob, I always like to start my interviews off by having our guests talk about that first mineral specimen that got you involved in collecting.
Okay.
Tell us your story. How did you first get involved?
A long time ago, when I was 10 years old, I was in the 5th grade in a little 2-room school. I lived out in the country, so there were 2 rooms. Room 1 had grades 1, 2, and 3, and room 2 had grades 4, 5, and 6. And when I was in the 5th grade, Miss Moran, my teacher, took the gang to Yale Peabody Museum to see the dinosaurs. And we go to the dinosaur hall in Yale, which is fantastic. But after you're in there for an hour or so, bones are bones. You get kind of bored, or at least I did. So
I'm sorry, Bob. Where was this? This was in Connecticut, right?
In Connecticut, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
go on.
In Connecticut, So I wandered away from the dinosaurs out into the main entry where they had a Foucault pendulum working, which of course shows how the world turns. And I found that fascinating. Unfortunately, it's not there anymore. And from there, I went upstairs and I walked into a room that was just full of display cases of minerals. I'd never seen minerals before. And I wandered them. I do remember seeing a huge 20-odd inch Japanese stibnite and some colorful wolfenites and things like that. And of all the minerals that were there, the one that caught my eye the most was really an ugly little fellow. It was a ball of needle crystals that were kind of green in color. And it was only a couple of inches wide. But sticking out of these pile of needles were black or nearly black, shiny crystals, which the label said epidote. And I read on, and it's a piece from the Untersalzbachtal in Austria. And I just loved that little specimen. I just didn't understand how something like that could form in the ground. Ironically, years and years and years later, I found out that specimen was a fake. But in 1936, it was the specimen that caught my eye. The other thing that caught my eye was a small room off to the side that was curtained, and I looked in there and I could see a display case full of pretty ugly black, gray, brown rocks, but there were some switches. And when I walked in, a light came on and I could see the rocks. So then it said something about flip the switch. So I flipped the switch and all of those ugly gray black rocks burst into colors, all sorts of colors. I had stumbled on a fluorescent mineral showcase. And of course, that's really what got me going. And the next day on Saturday, I went out in the garage. I got my dad's rock hammer and a screwdriver, and I was going to go out and find all the minerals in the world.
Keep in mind, everyone, this would have been 1936.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and I dabbled with minerals in a very minor way until after World War II. I was on the atomic bomb project in the Pacific, and when I got discharged, then I got serious, and I joined the New Haven Mineral Club and really began serious collecting.
Now, Bob, do you remember?
Of course, yeah.
Do you remember the first mineral that you collected, or the first mineral that was part of your collection?
Yeah, there were a couple. One of my earliest collecting days were at Green's Farm in Roxbury, Connecticut for garnets. Of course, big almandine garnets occurred in the schist there. But the specimen that I now have, or we now have, Evan has my collection now. The specimen we have that has survived all these years is just an ordinary piece of sandstone. And I collected that.
I love it.
In the Garden of the Gods in Colorado on my first trip to that wonderful state. And there it is. It's still with us. So we got my original rock hammer, and we got my one of my oldest, or if not the oldest, specimens still with us. So since then, I built a big collection. Then I turned it over to Evan, since he, for some foolish reason, got interested in minerals. No, I live vicariously through him.
Yeah, and well, yeah.
Is that a number I saw on that piece of sandstone?
Yeah, that's a number. Yeah.
Is it 01?
No, that's me.
No, he's got a number.
Right on. Now, Evan, I imagine that you were like me, that you grew up with minerals being all around you. What was the tipping point for you when you decided to start collecting? Or even like when you decided to become a mineral dealer? And I read something about you this morning. I don't know if this is true or not, but ironically, I think your father first introduced you to fossils, which was kind of like the gateway that he went through to get into mineral collecting. Is that true?
Well, that was the gateway that I went through. Yeah,
Okay.
I did grow up around minerals, certainly, since the day I was born, because the house was filled with display cases of specimens.
I'm sorry, this was in Arizona. By this time, Bob, you had ended up in Arizona, and Evan, you were born there and you grew up there, correct? And you're still there.
That's correct. I was born in, he moved to Arizona in 1959. I was born in 61. And, but I really didn't, minerals were just something that Dad did.
Right.
But about 7 or 8, I became interested in fossils. He had given me some small fossil collections in little boxes with specimens that were labeled. And that really started me collecting. But a few years later, 2 or 3, 4 years later, he had also given me some thumbnail mineral specimens. I decided that the minerals were much more interesting and more colorful than the fossils.
Well, going on a field trips was one of the things.
Yeah, because we didn't go collecting fossils; we went and collected minerals. So that
right. Okay, sure, that makes sense.
Point. And then, as far as becoming a dealer, I didn't really know what I was going to do when I got older. I knew I wanted to be involved in minerals. I thought maybe I could get into museum curation. I really hadn't thought about becoming a mineral dealer, but I did go to university for geology. I got my degree. And once I got out of school, becoming a mineral dealer seemed like the easy way to go. There weren't in the mid 80s. There weren't many jobs in the geology field anyway. So I just started selling minerals right away in the mid 80s once I got out of school.
And when did you start Unique Minerals with Mark? Mark Miterman is Evan's partner in Unique Minerals.
We started up in 2012.
Okay.
We've done some stuff prior to that time, buying lots of minerals, but we didn't actually start the new company until January 1st, 2012.
Gotcha.
Let me tell you a little something about Evan's collecting that he hasn't mentioned. When I would go out here in Arizona collecting, which was very fruitful back in the 60s, we'd go out and buy big flats and flats of stuff. It was really wonderful. And I'd bring that stuff home in the pieces that I wanted to keep. I would trim, and I often threw the trimmings out in the alley behind the house. Just, something to get rid of them. And I went out there one day, and guess who was in the alley collecting minerals in the junk pile?
Oh, I love it.
And that was his initial experience in mineral collecting.
Yeah, my first collection was trimmings. Yeah.
That's when you knew. That's when you said, "Yes, I sucked them in."
Yeah. And then we encouraged that by each summer when I would finish teaching, we would leave Arizona at the end of May and head back east to my dad's farm where I could work for the summer. And then we would stop on the way at mineral shops, of course, and we also stopped at various places so we could collect. We stopped in Florissant, Colorado to collect fossils there. And I can remember stopping for a lunch in Ohio one day, and they were excavating behind the restaurant, and Evan wandered back there and started digging fossils out of the excavation wall. So, yeah, and then back east, of course, then we would do the pegmatites and the different places back there where you could go for the summer and look at collections too. Always visiting in Yale to see that collection again and again.
Yeah. Now, Bob, we're talking a lot about collecting, and I know that you had an early interest in minerals, but we fast forward today, and you've written thousands of mineral-related articles and even some books. When did you focus on writing, and what was the catalyst for that?
Well, it started really when I was getting my master's degree. My master's degree was in the field of education, actually. or I started out there. And when it came time to do a master's thesis, I wrote a thesis in the field of education, and I took it in to give it to my advisor, and she looked at it and she said, I can't accept this because I haven't okayed your outline yet. And come on, I'm holding down 3 jobs. I have a family. I'm working my tail off, and I'm trying to get my master's and teaching school at the same time. And she's going to refuse my paper because she didn't okay the outline. Well, I walked out of there. I was really steaming, and luckily my old professor Bobby Brown, who was born in Telluride and he was a character. He happened to be there. So I walked into his office and he could tell I was really unhappy. And I told him what happened. He said, oh, Bob, for Christ's sake, he said, throw that in the trash can and do one for me. So I did. I threw the master's away, and I chose to do a master's on fluorescent minerals working with Bobby Brown. And that's how I got my degree in science. And that got me going on fluorescent minerals. And I thought, hell, if I can write a thesis, well, Brown said I should publish what I wrote. So I did. And from that, I went into Franklin, New Jersey, and I did a little booklet on Franklin, New Jersey fluorescence. And it just grew from there.
Snowballed, yeah.
Yeah, and then one day I thought, gee, I subscribed to Rocks and Minerals, and I thought, God, maybe I should write something about minerals. In those days, Rock and Mineral magazine was a series of columns like Neil Yedlin's on Micronauts. So I wrote to the editor and said, how come you don't have a column about fluorescent minerals? And Peter Zozak, and he wrote back, because you have not written it. So I
love it. Great answer.
So I started writing a column on fluorescent minerals and rocks and minerals. I did it for about 12 years. I didn't get paid. I just, it was fun doing it. And one day I had some guests at the house, and one of the guys was a writer. And I told him about rocks and minerals. He said, how much you get paid for an article? I said, nothing. He said, you idiot. You can get paid for doing that stuff. He said, I write for Lapidary Journal and I make money. So I wrote an article for Lapidary Journal just for the hell of it and sent it in. They sent me a check for $600. I thought I'd fall into heaven, for God's sakes.
That's still some serious money even for today.
Yeah. So, and in 72, I think it was the national show at Anaheim. And we went so the kids could go to Disneyland. And I think I was a judge at that show. I'm not sure. But anyway, somebody came up to me and said, anyway, I went over at the Anaheim show. I went over and talked to Jim Miller, and he asked me if I'd write for the magazine. Well, yeah, sure. He said, how many articles do you think you could do in a year? Well, I was teaching school, and had a family and traveling. And I said, well, I don't know, 3 or 4, I suppose. He said, oh, you can do better than that. He said, send whatever you want to. So I started cranking them out. And since 1972, I honestly can't tell you how many articles I've written for Rock and Jim, but it's probably somewhere up there between maybe 1,500, 1,800, approaching 2,000. I don't know. And in between, I've thrown together a couple of more books and stuff like that. But when I was in Paris, I met Anne Voileau, a very beautiful lady who was also a rock hound, friend of Dick Bideaux's. I'll give you a little inside dope on that. Dick was so much in love with Anne, he asked her to marry him, but it never happened. But anyway.
Ooh, we love the dirt.
I would have married him too if I was single. But anyway.
Woo, scandal.
She'd made a lot of money.
Secrets are coming out.
Yeah, she'd made a lot of money as a New York model and went back to Paris and started her magazine one day at Monroe. And she asked me if I would do something for her. So I wrote an article or two for her. And I don't know. I would write for anybody. I didn't care. My typewriter was a prostitute. It would do anything for money. So that's why That's how I ended up where I am today.
Bob, you whore, you're a whore.
Oh, you wanted the inside story. How much farther in there can I go?
No, I love it. I love it. That's exactly what I'm looking for on this show. Hey, Evan, let's put the spotlight on you. Skateboards and minerals, and at some point, you decided to pick up some instruments and start making music. What happened there? How did that come about?
Okay, well, I mean, when I was a teenager in high school, I had a lot of interests, aside from minerals. I had a stamp collection. I got into skateboarding.
Very well, as a matter of fact. He was a demonstrator.
Yeah, I guess I was. And
Evan, don't blush.
I was into model rocketry, all these different things. And I was also very much into music, like most young people. I had a huge record collection. I mean, the minute I turned 16, I was out going to concerts and different things. But when I went to university here in Tempe, during the summers, what I would do is I would go to Colorado and work for my brother in a place called Silverton, Colorado. He owned an assay lab, and he needed help during the summer in the lab. So I would move there every summer from 1980 to 1984 and work for him. And everyone up there were all deadheads. They were into the Grateful Dead, and I knew about the at the same time, a guy there had a guitar that he sold me, and I started, playing around with the guitar. And so, yeah, that's when the switch flipped, that I thought, actually, maybe I could play music. Of course, it took many years to become proficient. And that was also where I learned about the Grateful Dead, and which has led to the band that I've been in now for almost 30 years.
I used to go and listen to him play. And when I did, it was because I needed to get my monthly dose of smoke and noise. And,
but that was until the mid-'90s when they banned cigarettes from the bars and the nightclubs.
Right.
That must have really changed things.
It was a blessing.
Let me tell you something about Evan. He probably won't tell you. When the Grateful Dead were tops, there was one guy in San Francisco who made their guitars. All their guitars were made by this guy in San Francisco. And after most of them, after the Dead faded away, the fellow who was the guitar maker, was still doing it, and he got so he liked the tribute bands of the Grateful Dead. And so he decided he would make a guitar for the leading guitarist in a tribute band who most sound like the Dead. And guess who got the first guitar?
Well, that's not exactly the story.
That's what I like to tell.
A guitar that was built by one of the Grateful Dead's luthiers, so yeah, that was a very fortunate that I was able to acquire that.
It's a real honor to be recognized like that.
Well, I love it when the mineral show happens, when the different mineral shows happen to coincide with when Evan is playing. I've come down and I've seen you play in Denver a couple times. And then last year for the last Westward Look show that ever was, you were the life of the party. Your whole band, Extra Ticket, you were there jamming away, and everyone was having a great time. That was a terrific evening.
Guess what? We're going to do the same thing at Mineral City this year.
No kidding. Oh, which party? Is it the opening party or the closing party?
It'll be, I'm not sure if I can announce this now, but it's too late.
You already did.
Yeah, it's going to be Friday night, February 3rd.
February 3rd, Friday night. All right, people, check it out. That's going to be a great time.
Yeah, you can all go and get your dose of smoke and noise.
Yeah.
Right on. Now, Bob, you are a teacher, And through your lifelong dedication to the mineral community, you've continued teaching. Tell me, why is education so important to you? And talk about the necessity of mineral education to keep the new collectors coming into the hobby.
One of the regretful things that has happened in the education system is that they have basically done away with a lot of the science and mineralogy and things like that. When I write an article, I keep in mind that I don't know a lot about minerals. I kid myself if I think I'm an expert, but what I write is in hopes that someone else can read it and get the desire I had about minerals, so that they will follow up and search and get more, read more books and go to museums and go to shows and become a collector. There is so much to know and learn about minerals and the periodic table and elements and all that. I find it a fascinating world that you have to share with others. And
Absolutely.
My goal in writing anything is simply to tell people what I know enough of, so that they will get the interest to follow up and do the same thing and find and search and learn. I'm 97. I'll be 97 this year, and I'm still reading I can, and still getting on the internet and reading about minerals, because when you stop learning, you stop living.
Yep, absolutely. I don't think anyone could say it better. I mean, what you're doing is you are lighting the spark of curiosity and always asking the question, why? I think we had some other guest, and I can't remember who it was, but one of their points in the interview was always keep asking the question, why? And in your writing, which is a very approachable way of communicating about the mineral world, you are always kind of setting that up so that people can ask why and they can search for more information. And honestly, thank God we have the internet, that if somebody has some kind of curiosity or something, they can chase that down.
Oh, yeah. I still do it. Come on. It's there. You're very foolish if you don't follow up on stuff like that. There's always something to learn. Always.
I love it. I love it. Now, Evan, staying on the theme of education, we often talk about mentors in the mineral world. Other than your father, tell us about some of your mentors, how they affected you, and what you feel mentors can do to help the new collectors of today.
Yeah, well, I think it's certainly important to have mentors, because just like my dad said, nobody knows everything, and you can benefit from the experience of others who've been into this for a long time. Some of my earliest mentors, right out of college, I was hired by Wayne and Donna Light to work at their gallery for some time in Laguna Beach, and I would consider them to be early mentors who I learned a lot from and greatly respect. Another early mentor was a guy named Chuck Levitt. Some of you might remember him. He was a collector, kind of a low-key collector, but he owned a wholesale place called Bittner's Wholesale Minerals, where I worked for many years in the 90s, and he was a big inspiration. He knew how to run businesses, and I learned a lot about how to run a business from him, and he knew about minerals as well. And of course, other mentors here in Arizona that I would count as important to my learning and my growth would be Les Presmick, Wayne Thompson, and Mark Hay, people like that who have been collecting here for a long time, especially with a focus on Arizona minerals, which has been my primary focus of my personal collection since the 90s. It's really important to seek out these people and to ask them questions. And I also want to say it's really important. People always ask me, well, how do how can you pick up a mineral and look at it and know what it is and where it's from just by looking at it? Well, that comes from years and years and years of looking at thousands and thousands of minerals. In many cases, they're labeled. So assuming labels are correct, after a while, you start to see the differences. And I'm always telling beginner collectors that they really need to go to shows. You can only learn so much from the internet.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you have to handle minerals to really.
Go to the rock shop, mineral shops, go field collecting, go to shows, get your hands on as many specimens as possible.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think exposure is a big part of it. And Bob, you've been one of the co-hosts of What's Hot in Tucson for many, many years. And I've gotten a lot of feedback over the years from people saying, ooh, I saw the What's Hot in Tucson program and it's incredible and it taught me so much. And even then, that's just, it's another way to expose yourself to new minerals, to different minerals. And the more you watch it, the more you learn. But it doesn't replace the actual experience of going to shows, going to museums, and seeing these things live in person. That makes all the difference in the world.
And reading books on mineralogy, and if you can, go to school for it. You'll learn a lot.
I have a comment on your DVDs that you do on What's Hot. Whether you realize it or not, what you are doing is documenting mineralogy as it is today. And anyone 30 years from now, 40 years from now, whenever picks up one of those things, they can learn what it was like at this time and what was available and where it came from, and all of the information that is on those discs is precious because it is history preserved.
Yes. Thank you, Bob. Thank you for saying that, and thank you for your years of dedication to both Blue Cap Productions and to the mineral community in playing your part. And it's not only What's Hot in Tucson, you've also been the host of What's Hot in Munich a few times. So you are as much a part of that as I am.
Let me share with you just one other comment about mentors. I was fortunate to live in Scottsdale, and Scott Williams, who was one of the founders of Minerals Unlimited in California, moved over to Scottsdale and opened up a shop. And as soon as the day I arrived to live here, I went to his shop. And I got to know Scott very, very well over a period of time. And every Saturday morning, I would go in early, about 8 o'clock, and Scott and I would sit at the counter with a couple of microscopes and talk minerals. He taught me more on a Saturday morning for years, and he was no doubt the most important mentor in my mineralogy history. He really was quite a man, and I was so disappointed when he moved out of, and he went into college and taught in the Midwest. But he was a great loss to the hobby at that time, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think you bring up a very good point, and we talk about this a bit in the What's Hot shows, but such an important part to mineral collecting is building the relationships with other collectors, building relationships with dealers that you can trust out there. And it's something that you don't want to do quickly. You want to build it over time. And the more time you can spend with these people exchanging information, the more both of you gain from it. And so the last couple of years, we've really been dealt a blow because of COVID, and we've all been separated for so long. And that's the joy of what's happening now with us starting to come together. I mean, we're on the cusp of the 2023 Tucson show, and I can't wait to get out there and start seeing everybody in person, because it's those interactions that you have that are just happenstance. You just happen to run into someone in the halls of the TGMS show, and you end up talking for 40 minutes to an hour, and some ideas spark. And those are things that you just can't capture any other way other than by participating and being at the shows, going to the museums, talking to people, even talking to them over the internet. It's that one-to-one connection, those interpersonal relationships that are so important.
Don't forget now, the people in the mineral hobby span the entire spectrum of the human race. There are people who are collectors who are almost homeless. They're at the bottom of the social list, you might say. And yet at the same time, you can be standing there talking to someone who's got 2 doctorate degrees or someone who's a professor at a college. They are all in the hobby, makes all equal, regardless of their past experience, their wealth, or their experience. They are all mineral collectors first.
Absolutely. It's a thing that unites all of us on the entire spectrum.
That's right. Absolutely.
Guys, we're about 40 minutes into the show. I'm going to ask Eloise to maybe fire off the poll. So, Evan, you can just close that out. You don't have to look at that. But I'm going to turn it over to you because I know you've got some interesting things to share with us. And let's start with the family artifact that you showed me at the beginning of the show.
Oh, yeah. Be nice now.
The tip is flat here. This used to be pointed probably, 75 years ago, but it got a lot of use.
Yeah, it got used pretty good.
Explain
to the viewers what we're looking at here, other than just a rock pick.
Okay, well, you can't see it, but on the side of this, it's stamped in the metal, and it says MWA.
That's my father-in-law's initials.
And then it says Hathaway, Colorado, 1915. Now, Hathaway, Colorado is halfway up Pikes Peak in Colorado, where my great-grandparents had a cabin at the turn of the 20th century. So this was my grandfather's rock hammer. That's my mother's father, that he had in 1915 up in Colorado.
Yeah, that's what I used until, I don't even remember when I got my new hammer, but I used it.
Yeah, and then this became my father's rock hammer. This was the one I remember him using in the 60s.
Oh my God. And now it's yours.
And now it's part of our collection.
I love it. I love it.
So this is a 120 year or something like that, 115-year-old rock hammer.
Yeah. Incidentally, we used to ride the railroad, the cog line up to Halfway, where the old cabin was, and we always branched off from there looking for Amazonite and smoky quartz.
I didn't because I wasn't born yet.
Yeah. And one of the great hikes is to go to Halfway, get off the train, and then follow the pipeline across over to the incline, which no longer exists. And we used to then ride the incline down, eating the wild raspberries all the way.
Wow. Wow. What a trip that must have been.
Yeah.
So I brought some other things.
Okay. What do you have?
If you'd like to look at them.
Absolutely. I can hear the rush of people pounding on their keyboards. Show us the minerals.
Okay, well.
Oh, wait a minute. This is not a mineral.
We got one more artifact to show you.
Okay.
Okay.
Old timers will recognize, maybe not, but will recognize the story goes through.
This is an old rum bottle.
There used to be a character collector by the name of Ed McDowell. People who knew Ed they've got stories to tell about Ed. But Ed was a very, very sharp collector. And he at the Tucson show, he would go around and look at all the displays. And he would identify what he called the best damn rock in the show. That was his phrase. That's the best damn rock in the show. And so Ed McDowell's name became associated with quality minerals.
And this would have been in the 60s, right?
Yeah. And so a couple of dealers by the name of John Patrick and help me out here.
Walt Lidstrom.
Walt Lidstrom from up in Oregon.
Okay.
They decided when Ed died, they decided that the best display in the show ought to get the best damn trophy. So they established a trophy called the Ed McDowell Trophy, and it was awarded to the best exhibit in the show, mineral exhibit in the show each year. Now, the caveat of that was if you won the trophy and got the cup, you also had to drink out of Ed's rum bottle. When Ed was found dead in the Adams Hotel in Silverton, this was sitting next to his bed. And Ed died of diabetes. And he'd been drinking heavy, and I guess it killed him. But anyway, for a number of years, the winners of the Ed McDowell Trophy had to get up in front of everybody on a Saturday night and have a swig of rum out of Ed's bottle. And finally, they decided that, when John and Walt sort of faded out of the show, they changed the trophy title from Ed McDowell Trophy to the Des Hotels Trophy, to the best.
Yeah.
And one bottle disappeared. Some years later, I was talking to John. He said, "Bob," he said, "you're the one who ought to have that rum bottle." So he gave it to me. And never did. So.
Well, now, if I'm not mistaken, my father, Ed Swoboda, I think was the first recipient of the McDowell Trophy.
And I think I see a message from Gene Myron that it was John Patrick and Al McGinnis who founded the.
That's right.
McDowell Trophy.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Not Lidstrom.
Now I'm showing my age.
Well, you're wearing your age with a grace that all of us will envy.
That's not the only thing I wear.
So, well, I have some minerals too to show off, and these are all specimens that were in my father's original collection, which I started curating in the early 80s. And since they're all from Arizona, because that's all we have now.
Fantastic.
So, want to see some?
Yeah.
Well, I think I might have a mineral collector or two on the show that would want to see such
I
a thing.
never get to see my minerals anymore. He's got them in his house.
Yeah, that are left. But anyway, so here's this is a vanadinite from the Apache mine. And earlier we were talking about how Dad would go field collecting in the 60s. And this is a specimen that he had collected in 1970.
I don't know.
I
don't remember. Yeah.
So it's a vanadinite from the Apache mine here near Globe, Arizona.
Yeah. The Apache mine was an absolute prolific vanadinite mine. During World War II, they were shipping carloads, bringing out miners' cars loads of just crystals of vanadinite. And when you'd go in there, and if you broke into a seam, you could spend the entire weekend pulling specimens out of the brecciated rock that were covered with crystals. And it was not unusual to collect 30 or 40 flats of fine.
My God.
In a weekend. And what I would do is I'd take, a few, I'd keep a few for trade and then a couple for the collection. And the rest of them I would go, when I would go to the next Mineralogical Society of Arizona meeting, I would take a flat of two of those things with me, put them out on the front table. And this was for the people in the club who could no longer go out in the field and collect.
Right.
It would just be a free for all, and that was your way of just sharing your good luck of collecting.
Good for you, Bob. Good for you.
I don't do that anymore, and I wish they would. We had to stop.
It's a different world. It's a different world.
We had to stop it finally because one guy knew it was happening, so he would sit in the front row at the club, at the meeting, and as soon as someone said okay, he would dash up there and grab 4 or 5 of the best things for himself, and so that's what killed it. It was just damn selfishness you see in our hobby.
I hear you. What else you have there for us, Evan?
Okay. More Bob Jones original collection specimens. This is a large azurite rose from Bisbee, Arizona.
Oh, that's fabulous.
That's really
That's a
exceptional.
beautiful thing. There used to be a couple from Richfield, Connecticut, who collected minerals and occasionally sold minerals. In fact, they used to come and stay with Susie Davis, the wholesaler in Tucson, and the bronze. And I would help them. He was an older person, and I'd help them carry their stuff into the show, and go to their house and help and work with them on their collection. And one day they finally said you could have a specimen, so that was what I chose out of their collection. George and Florence Braun was their names.
That's superb. And Bob, I mean, it looks fantastic. How did that rate compared to the other specimens that were available in the market at the time?
At the time, it was one of the best. They had gotten that from Davis, yeah.
It's still one of the best. Now, strangely enough, the bronze thought this was from Zacatecas, Mexico, but it's actually from, this was collected in 1895 from the Zara mine in Bisbee.
How did you find out that it wasn't from Zacatecas and it was from the Bisbee instead?
I think Dick Graham had visited the house when I was a kid in the early 70s and looked at it and said, "No way, that's from Bisbee."
Yeah.
So
nobody knew Bisbee better than Dick.
Yeah. One of the problems we had here in Arizona was because a lot of Mexican things were filtering in all the time. Now, flats and flats. But the Mexican miners didn't want people to know where they were digging sometimes. And so they would put another locality name on it. And the same in Arizona, or is that, oh, well, that's from Mexico. Well, in fact, it wouldn't be from Mexico. It would be from Bisbee or somewhere else. So.
A tradition that continues to this day.
That's right. That's why knowing your minerals, really knowing your minerals, is so critical to a good collection.
Exactly. Yeah. Ooh.
So yes, this is malachite and calcite. And as I recall, Dad, you went up to Cottonwood, Arizona in the mid-70s to look at a collection.
Yeah. What happened was this woman who lived in Cottonwood, her husband died. And he had been a collector of sorts. And so she asked somebody at the State Museum if there was someone who could come and see her collection and give her an idea on it. And so they put her on to me. And I talked to her on the phone. She said she had a couple of the shoe boxes full of copper, and could I look at them? And so I said, well, and Cottonwood's 100 miles away. So I said, well, did you ever come to Phoenix? Oh, yeah, I go to Phoenix to my doctor all the time. I said, well, bring them down sometime and then come on over to the house and we'll. So she did. And the copper turned out to be just ordinary open pit copper sheets in rock and nothing much. But while I'm looking at her copper, she's looking at my mineral collection. Oh, I had one of those. Oh, I had one. Oh, I had one of those. I had one like that. Oh, holy shit, what is this? And so I decided I better go to Cottonwood and see her collection, which I did. Well, it turned out to be nothing but lapidary stuff. It was a few quartz crystals that were dinged and, very terrible, nothing at all. And finally I said, well, is there anything else that you haven't shown me? Well, my husband's favorite specimen is on the table next to the bed up in the bedroom. I said, can I see it? She said, well, sure. So she went up and this is what she brought down. I damn near fell out of my chair.
Wow.
And he had purchased it from Bideaux, who had bought Scott Williams' business. And so that's the history of this specimen. And Dick Graham says it's probably one of the best of that type that ever came out of Bisbee. And now I have a problem, and everybody who gets into this does have the same problem. Here's a person with a specimen, doesn't know what it's worth, doesn't have any idea what it is. And how do you buy it and be honest about it? So finally I said, well, you sell it. And she said, oh, yeah. She said, what do you think it's worth? So At the time, I said, well, it's worth $200-300, I guess. She said, well, I'll be happy with $200. So I gave her $200. I got a specimen. Now,
So you were honest about the value of it
at
the time, of course. Yeah, I mean, you couldn't speculate in the future, but you were honest about the value of it, and then you were fortunate enough that she allowed you to purchase it at within that range that you had mentioned.
But I think this was 1975 or something.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
That's how it happens.
That's spectacular.
The other thing I'd like to say is if someone tells you they have minerals, don't ever not go. Always go and look, because you never know what's there.
You can have some killer sleepers out there. And that's, to me, that really makes for an exciting story when you find a killer sleeper out there and you can acquire it at a fair price, and then you can share it and people are all blown away because they haven't seen a piece like that from a historic mine in 50 years.
What do we have to talk about with minerals is some of these exciting events that happen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, another one here. What is this one?
Here's another one. This is a wolfenite from the Defiance mine in Cochise County, Arizona, that was collected in 1957. Yeah. And what's this? This was in a collection, a guy by the name of Harry Hill. I believe,
we had a
1960s.
We had a local collector who was from Kansas. He and his wife had raised chickens for one of the big chicken outfits, and when they retired they came here, and Harry got involved in minerals with Arthur Flagg, the state curator, and this specimen was in Harry Hill's collection. Well, when Harry passed away, the collection, part of the collection, was offered to the State Museum, and the curator at that time kind of diddled and dawdled, and he didn't know. And one of his helpers whispered in my ear, you know, Harry's collection is for sale. You ought to go look at it. So I did, and I couldn't afford the collection. It was in the thousands of dollars, but this was sitting there. So the guy who bought the collection allowed me to, pick something from my own collection, and so I got this one. I paid him $5 for it.
Wow! Oh my God! $5.
That's come on. We're talking 50 years ago.
Right. But I mean, it's always fun to look back at it and the fair price then compared to what it would be worth today. And to me, that's the jaw-dropping chasm.
Right.
Yeah.
Spectacular.
The killer of the Hill collection was the Tiger collection, which he donated to the State Museum. And unfortunately, some of those didn't survive.
Well, several of those are still in the
some are still
in the state collection.
The lead halite that was in that collection seems to have.
No, it's there.
Oh, is it there? Oh, good.
Yeah,
Thank God it's back.
Yeah, no, it's there.
Okay.
Now, Evan, all of these pieces are in your personal collection, and I guess the question is, how often do you display your personal collection? I know back in November when we had the open weekend at the Tucson Fine Mineral Gallery, you did a presentation there, but you also had a case of minerals that was from your personal collection that was not available to sale. So how often do you put together a display like that?
Actually, not very often. But generally, if I'm invited by a show or a group, if I can accommodate them and put a display up, I'll go ahead and do it.
Yeah. The other thing that he does participate in, we have a local group called the Minions, and they put in a display case at Tucson each year. So each member contributes one or two or three specimens for that display, and so he does display the odd piece here and there.
I want to throw in. I just saw a message. The tiger minerals from the Hill collection that Dad was talking about were donated to the Flagg Mineral Foundation, not the museum. So those are still part of the Flagg Mineral Foundation collection. And
And the flag organization is very active. Great program, especially for the young children.
Yeah, I'm the last surviving member of the founding group of the flag.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you have a special hat?
No, no. So,
we have time for one more.
Absolutely, we have time for one more.
What's that?
Okay, this is, you can probably see that this is an octahedral crystal. And what it is a cuprite crystal from the Ray mine. And this is from a pocket that was found in 1980 by a field collector by the name of John Meadows, who also owns Copper City Rock Shop in Globe. And this is the largest crystal from the find. And Dad, you can tell the story of when you bought this.
Yeah, well, John and I were good buddies, and I went collecting with him once in a while. He called me one day and said, "Hey, Bob, I just got some nice cuprite. Shall I come up and take a look?" Well, that's 60 miles away, but I managed to find my way up there. And there was another collector there at the time, and John had all these laid out, and I went through them, and I anguished over a couple of them that were kind of expensive, but I picked this one and another one. And after I picked them, the other collector said, "I'm sorry you took that because that's the one I was going to buy." Well, say anything. I didn't know. I had first pick apparently, so I did. Anyway, it's a nice one.
Yeah.
John called me. He said, "You want to go collecting in the Ray pit?" "Yeah, sure." Well, it so happened this is the middle of August. Temperature was like 150. And you go in an open pit and start collecting on the south-facing side of the pit in the afternoon at over 100 degrees, and you think you're going to die right there.
Yep.
And all we got was sheet copper.
Yeah.
But it was a fun trip.
That is dynamite. That is dynamite. Well, guys, we are at the top of the hour, and we're going to go into a segment of our program now called the Quickfire 5. So I've got 5 questions I'm going to ask. 2 of them are for Bob, 2 are for Evan, and 1 of them is for both of you to answer. I have 2 answers for each question. All of your answers are correct. So you just pick the one of the 2 answers that you resonate with strongly. All of the viewers have tried to predict how you're going to guess, or how you're going to answer. So we're going to see how well everybody knows the Jones boys. Are you ready?
Now that I'm thoroughly confused.
We're ready.
We'll make this easy. Bob, the first question is going to go to you. You're going to pick one of these 2 answers. Tell me which resonates with you strongest as quickly as you can. So number 1 question to Bob, motorcycle or bicycle?
I used to race motorcycles.
So is that your final answer, motorcycle?
Yes.
Which do I like the most?
Say yes.
Yes.
Motorcycles. Of course, I raced motorcycles.
Right on. Evan, question number 2, going to you. This is an easy one. Rolling Stones or Grateful Dead?
I picked Grateful Dead.
Grateful Dead, of course.
Although I do love Stones.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Bob, question number 3 is going straight to you. Which is more exciting, Colombian Emerald Mine or the Rowley Mine?
Well, the Rowley, because you can collect there. In a Colombian Emerald Mine, they wouldn't let you even get within 3 feet of the damned emeralds.
Right on. Evan, 4th question. This is going to you. Best place. Oh, I love this one. Best place to live, cabin by a river or a cave by a creek?
I pick cave by a creek.
That's what I thought you'd go with.
I'd go by the river.
The final question is for both of you. Wolfenite or tourmaline?
Yeah, no argument there, Wolfenite. Absolutely.
Wolfenite. Absolutely. All right, let's check what our viewers said. Eloise, are we ready?
Yes, we are ready.
Okay. Number one question went to Bob. The question was motorcycles or bicycles. Bob immediately chose motorcycles. What did our viewers say?
Motorcycle, of course, yes.
Absolutely. Okay, second question went to Evan. The question was Rolling Stones or Grateful Dead. This better be 100%. Of course, Evan chose Grateful Dead. What did our viewers say?
Of course they were listening. Come on, Grateful Dead.
That was an easy one. Okay. Number three went to Bob. What was more exciting, Colombian Emerald Mine or Rowley Mine? Bob went with Rowley Mine. What did our viewers say?
Guess what? Rowley Mine.
Uh-huh. People know the
well.
Joneses. Okay. This one is a little bit tongue-in-cheek. It was to Evan, best place to live, cabin by a river or cave by a creek. Evan went cave by a creek. What did our viewers say?
You know what? By 1%, cave by a creek. Yes. 51%. Got it right.
Hey, we win. Does that mean we get a shot of rum out of Ed McDowell's bottle?
Yes, and you have to drink it live on the show.
Forget it.
And oh, there goes Evan. And the final question was to both the Jones boys, Wolfenite or tourmaline. They predictably went with Wolfenite. What did our viewers say?
Same, of course, Wolfenite.
That is 5 out of 5. Our viewers know the Jones boys. All right. Hey, Evan, just for fun, do you want to explain the story behind cabin by a river or cave by a creek?
Cave by a creek, yeah.
Yeah. So no, the answer to Cave by a Creek is that we both live in Cave Creek, Arizona.
So that's why I said it was a bit tongue-in-cheek.
We don't live in Cabin River, Arizona.
All right, we're going to go to the Q&A. These are questions that the viewers have typed in and hoping that you can answer it. So Eloise is going to ask you some of these questions. So take it away, Eloise.
All right, so I have Evan Molidor asking, what's your favorite fluorescent mineral and your favorite fluorescing color?
That's for me?
For both of you guys, I guess. There was no Bob or Evan.
You answer, Dad, since you were the fluorescent guy.
What's your question?
What is your favorite fluorescent mineral color?
Oh, boy. Boy, that's a tough one. You'd probably laugh at me, but I would say the mineralites from up in northern Canada, because I had the chance to go up there and collect. And I think while I was there, I provided a feast for all the black flies in Canada.
And what color is mineralite?
It fluoresces a bright yellow under ultraviolet. Yeah.
Perfect. Actually, the question was for both the mineral and the color, so that answers both questions at once. Next question. Any update on publishing your second collecting book?
Only if somebody wants to come up with the price of getting it printed. I can't.
So, Bob, how many locations were in the first book, The Frugal Collector?
I don't know. It went from A to M, I think.
Okay. So then you have enough stories to finish the M to Z. We just need to figure out a way to get it published.
It's already written. As a matter of fact, I had all the information for publishing it, and we shared that with an outfit over in China in hopes that something would happen, but nothing ever did.
And so The Frugal Collector is available. How can people get a copy of that?
No, I don't know.
Go to Bob's house, ring his doorbell.
Records on magazine, I suppose. I don't know. Maybe it's on the internet. I've got a couple of dozen copies here, but it kind of fell by the wayside when there wasn't any money to publish volume 2.
Well, I'm not sure it's being printed anymore.
No, probably not.
And I'm gonna.
Next question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. So
Oh, you can
Gary,
actually. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna cut in real quick, Eloise. If you can cut to my camera there, it is available on Amazon apparently.
Hey,
So that is the book right there, The Frugal Collector, and Amazon has it for $64.95.
You're kidding.
Yeah, so hey, that's a place that you can find it. So everyone has access to Amazon. So, all right. Sorry, Eloise, back to you.
no worries. Next question is by Gary Sonnenberg, is asking, so remember at the very beginning of the interview, you talked about this fake epidote from the Green Monster Mountain in Arkansas. Did you ever found a real one that entered in your collection eventually?
I'm sorry, I had trouble.
well, yeah, I think the fake emerald
Epidotes.
Austria.
It's from Austria.
And
Austria, okay.
you did end up with one.
Oh yeah. What happened on the on Green Monster was I got friendly with a couple of guys from Alaska who collected there, and one of my regrets is that they invited me to come and collect for a week, and I didn't go. But I handled a lot of Green Monster epidotes. I had one in my collection. It was beautiful. It was a doubly terminated epidote, and sitting right in the middle of the prison face was a Japan law twin quartz. And then I had some other much bigger pieces, but they got traded off and sold because we started to stick with Mexico and then Arizona.
Terrific. And just to clear up some confusion that's going on, Green Monster Mine is in Alaska.
South of
Alaska, sorry.
Yeah. And to get there, you have to fly in and land on a lake and then hike up to the top of the mountain to get into the deposit. Yeah. It produced some phenomenal epidotes. It really did. Beautiful.
If you're interested in the locality, there's a great chapter in American Mineral Treasures that talks about the Green Mountain Mine.
Okay. Yeah. It's under claim now. You can't just bomb in there. Somebody else claims.
Next question.
Next question. Okay, it's more of a controversial question. Greg Jackson is saying, I was inspired by a guy with a beautiful collection who lived off Green Hills Avenue in Tucson in 1968. Was that you? He lived in Placita, Caribe, and was in 4th grade. Greg Jackson. Jacobs, sorry. Does that ring a bell to you?
No, none of us ever lived in Tucson.
Okay, so that answers.
Yeah.
Perfect. Next question is by Steve, and he's asking something about rocks and gems. I don't know if you want to answer that question, but let's see. You were a big part of Rock and Gem for many years, and I know you have stepped back from that. What do you think of the direction Rock and Gem is going with the increased emphasis on crystal use in heating? So I don't know if you want to answer that question or not, but it's out there.
Yeah, I used to write 2 articles in a column every month. I started in 72, and a couple of years ago, they decided to a slight change in the format, the layout of the magazine, and they've gotten away from articles on minerals like mine, and they have gone into publishing a magazine that is more in the modern style, where you have more small pictures and shorter paragraphs. They recognize that the reading public doesn't want to read reams of information. They want to read short, topical paragraphs that they can absorb while they're sitting in a bus or sitting on the john, or I don't know where it is, but it's a little bit different layout. Now all I write for them is a column, which is still in my old style. And they have my name on the masthead as editor emeritus, which, that and a $5 bill won't get you a cup of coffee.
All right. Well, let's move on with Philip Yorto is asking, what about the vanadinite from the Hamburg mine? Do you have any around, or what do you think about them?
Well, I have one in the collection that was collected by a field collector we had here for many years by the name of Dave Shannon. And Dave collected the nicest vanadinites from that locality. I think that was back in the early 80s, maybe late 70s, early 80s. And we do have one in the collection that was acquired quite a bit later than that. But yeah, very beautiful vanadinites, nice red, prismatic, slender crystals.
Perfect. Thank you. I think that answered that question.
I don't think either of us have ever been to the locality, actually. No.
Okay. Actually, talking about collecting, Dan is asking, what was your favorite spot for collecting in Connecticut, in the Connecticut collecting area? What was your favorite spot?
Well, of course, the most prolific would have been the Greens farm up in Roxbury, where he collected pockets full of garnets just by walking on the road into the mine. As far as field collecting goes, any one of the pegmatites had potential, but of them all, the Case quarry probably produced. No. Let me change that. The Upper Marial mine, was the Redling mine in Upper Marial, Connecticut, where I had the most success in finding good pegmatite minerals.
So that was your favorite?
Yeah.
Okay.
But of course they began mining there, so I couldn't go anymore. The Branch quarry was good too. They had a lot of rare stuff, Fairfieldite, things like that.
All right, perfect. Okay, now Dixtara is asking, did you learn a lot of John Tinkankas? It seems that you knew him very well. Did you learn a lot from him?
John was one of my mentors. I would go over to John's house and stay a week at a time. And his library was his garage, row upon row upon row of books and pamphlets and articles. And John and I would spend days together talking minerals, going through his library, using it as a reference for me. He was just, you couldn't have asked for a more generous, more intelligent, well-founded mineralogy than John Tinkankas. I admired him so much, and his wife was just as nice, just a wonderful lady.
Well, thank you very much, Bob and Evan. And I wanted to thank Les Pressmick as well, who has been very active in the chat. Sorry, I was not very active today in the chat because I was trying to figure things out. I had like issue on my own on the video. So thanks. That's all the questions. I guess, Evan, you saw the chat going like crazy on the side, and you saw that a lot of people were exchanging and commenting. Yeah. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Yeah, trying to catch those.
All right, Brian, it's back to you then.
Okay, Bob, I have one last question for you. Can you tell us the story behind BOBJONESITE?
Yeah, sure. Pat Haynes, who is a graduate of the School of Mines in Boulder, not Boulder, Golden. Pat's a wonderful guy. I've known him for years and years. And his goal is to find new minerals, and he is very good at it. He has, to his credit, he has well over a dozen new mineral finds. And when he was finding some of these things, he decided he really wanted to name the minerals after those who had won the Carnegie Mineralogical Award. And the problem was there were a number of them, like Sucanthus and Poe and Visitas, had already gotten minerals named after them. And when he was collecting up in Utah in the uranium district, he found a new mineral, they thought, and he gave it to the guy up in Canada to analyze. And I didn't know anything about it. And I had a call one day from Joe Bryce there in Canada. And Joe said, Bob, how about sending me a copy of your bio? Yeah, sure, Joe, no problem. So what do you want that for? There was this silence on the phone. And he finally said, you haven't heard? I said, heard what? He said, well, there's a new mineral been found and they want to name it after you. Well, surprise. And so I sent him the bio, and that's the last I heard of it for a while. When it was finally analyzed, and they named it BOBJONESITE. And so I got a hold of Pat, whom I knew quite well. I said, Pat, tell me about finding it, and any chance we can go see it sometime or go dig sometime. Yeah, sure, Bob. So I arranged a little weekend trip for Evan, my son Bill, and myself. And we met Pat Haynes up there in Utah, and we went to the locality in the mine, and they had already started sealing off the mine with cement because of the radioactivity. But we got in the back way, and there it was. It was a petrified wood log in the Shinnewan Formation that actually extends down into the Grand Canyon, and it is a hydrous vanadium sulfate, and it loses moisture or loses water very easily. They had a real problem identifying it. And so it's well named because, Bob Jones, I lose water as rapidly as anything. So,
Oh, that was absolutely excellent. Gentlemen, we're going to close our show. I want to thank both of you for being on the show and for being patient with us as we're stumbling through these technological problems. Bob, I really missed you, man. I haven't seen you for a bunch of years, so I'm really looking forward to seeing you in Tucson later this month, maybe.
You're going to be in Tucson on the 5th of February.
Absolutely.
They make the American Mineral Award, American
Mineral Heritage Award.
Yeah, that goes to Dick and Bob Houck, who are good friends. I was the one who nominated them for that award. So I promised I would be there, so I'll see you there.
Excellent. That's going to be at the Tucson Fine Mineral Gallery. Blue Cap Productions will be recording that for the people who are not able to attend, and we will broadcast that. So, Bob, Evan, thank you so much for being on the show. Really great to see you. Thank you for sharing your stories with us.
Ryan, thanks, Eloise.
Thanks for thinking of us.
Thanks, Raquel, wherever you are.
All right. And for all of you viewers out there, thank you for tuning in to our first show of 2023. Fingers are crossed that we'll have fewer technical problems moving forward. Our next show is actually going to be live from Tucson. So make sure to tune in next month for Mineral Talks Live. Until then, mahalo. Have a great time. We'll see you soon. Bye.